Ever since Drake's 20v1 in 2024, it's been hard to keep track who he deems his greatest enemy to be. But one name that returns to the forefront of that conversation at least once every quarter is none other than Joe Budden.
Drake, don't shoot at me now that you ice cold. I'm not doing it back and forth with a corpse.
What's funny is that Joe Budden has not rapped in nearly a decade. But ever since Drake's battle with Kendrick Lamar, Joe Budden has become the most heavily dissed rapper in Drake's music, aside from Kendrick himself. While Kendrick was performing Not Like Us at the Super Bowl in February 2025,
I want to perform their favorite song, but you know they love the suit.
Drake was busy releasing an R&B album, but he still found the time to call Joe Budden a D-sucker on that album. By the time Iceman rolled around, Drake devoted around 8 bars to vividly describing himself stealing Joe's quote-unquote bubble-shaped ladies, returning them back to Joe and leaving him in a puzzled state. So why does Drake continuously attack a retired rapper? Well, the answer probably actually lies in the fact that Joe Budden is retired. Drake knows that Joe won't respond on wax. He already did that 4 different times 10 years ago. But 10 years later, Joe hosts a podcast where he's forced to discuss trending topics every day, meaning that Drake's name comes up in nearly every episode, leading to a never-ending cycle of back and forth. Joe critiques Drake, Drake cries about it on a song.
Spicy.
For example, ever since the last bar that Drake aimed at Joe on Iceman, Joe has already been accused of being paid by Kendrick's former label, TDE, to spread narratives. He also threatened Drake's biggest mouthpiece, Akademiks' little minion, Grand Wizard Chat Guy, and now their tension might reach a whole other level, with Joe recently declaring on his podcast that nobody fears Drake's pen anymore, and that Drake's greatest competition is no longer real MCs, but instead, it's pop stars like Don Toliver and Gunna.
Embarrassing.
Now what I find hilarious is that even though he's retired, Joe Budden might be the rapper that Drake fears the most. Because what if I told you that not only did a large portion of Drake's early style and flow derive from Joe Budden's blueprint, but a large arsenal of lyrical ammo that Kendrick and Pusha T used in their rap battles against Drake also derived from a formula and diss records that Joe Budden had first concocted. Joe Budden has studied Drake's career very carefully, and that is why he is one of the hardest targets that Drake has ever had to shake off. But in order to understand that, we gotta understand how these two titans even got their footing within the music industry in the first place.
If it ain't about the bread, it ain't concerning me. I'm like a journalist, I got a put down in Germany. They never heard of this, felt like a plane without the turbulence. You moving totalist, lit up a beat and try to murder it.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.
In 2002, Drake was a teen actor on a Canadian sitcom called Degrassi, where he would begin to dabble into music. Meanwhile, Joe was already headfirst into the music business, signing a deal with Def Jam in 2002 and putting up his first massive hit single, Pump It Up, by 2003. This song was so big that Joe claims he still gets 5-figure royalty checks for it almost 25 years later in 2006.
Look at me. Oh my God.
However, despite the success of Pump It Up, Def Jam struggled with making Joe a global superstar. His first album didn't do crazy numbers, and his second one kept getting delayed. So instead of disappearing, Joe actually took matters into his own hands, hit the internet and the streets, and built a loyal fan base through his mood music mixtapes. It was these tapes that yielded Joe the credit of being one of the pioneers in making rap music that was heavily emotional, confessional, relationship heavy, insecure, moody, brutally personal, all very early on, which is of course the exact kind of style that Drake later turned into the norm.
Whatever it takes, find a way. Nobody understands that I'm depressed lately. I'm sort of feeling repressed lately.
Joe was also very early on leveraging the internet to release his music and digitally connect with fans. A strategy that Drake would adopt when he tried to pivot from acting into rapping and began building a small buzz on platforms like MySpace through his own first mixtape, Room for Improvement. The title of the tape was fitting because there was a lot of room to improve. The tape only sold around 6,000 copies, a far cry from the millions of copies Drake would go on to sell, but even beyond that, many fans would point out that Drake hadn't fully formed his own style just yet. Instead, he was taking major inspiration from artists that came before him, like Kanye West and Joe Budden.
Pick one, I'm on a Canada block. And some sweatpants, sandals, and socks, cause I could do that.
Where else, Joey, would you have him going so crazy?
And it wouldn't just be fans who pointed this out. The Canadian hip-hop scene at the time was very small, so if one rapper was sending subliminals, they were likely easy to catch. Now pay attention, because this will tie back to Joe Budden. Because before we break down his beef with Drake, we gotta look at what I believe is Drake's very first beef as an actual rapper. Now, Drake actually won this beef so badly that his opponent ended up scraping his diss records so thoroughly off the internet that to this day, you can't even find them. This is a post on Reddit from 2 years ago in their Lost Media section, with fans asking if anyone has their hands on these diss tracks. But the timeline goes something like this. Aristo, who was another Toronto MC, had dropped a freestyle called Swagnificent, where Drake believed he was sending shots. This prompted Drake to respond with a track of his own called Good Night and Good Luck, which then prompted Aristo to respond with a track called Good Morning, where he's got an interesting set of bars, specifically calling out Drake for completely biting both Kanye West and Joe Budden's entire style.
You was Kanye, but now all of a sudden you Joe Budden, you a motherfucking good mimic.
This was somewhere around 2006, and by the end of that year, Drake and his now well-known producer, Boy Wonder, would do a radio interview breaking down this beef, and Boy Wonder himself would state that it all started on that Swagnificent record, the freestyle that Aristo did, because he was sending what they perceived to be shots at Drake, stating that, again, Drake sounded like Joe Budden.
I go and I listen to the song. Nah, I don't rap like Kanye, Joe Budden, whatever. Everybody know that freaking Drake sounded kind of like Budden's on Do What You Do. So I'm like, okay, that's...
So notice that even early on in Drake's career, his team definitely acknowledged that Joe Budden was a massive inspiration for the sound that Drake was now laying down. Now, another shot that Aristo would send at Drake is that he claimed that Drake actually wore thongs. Huh? And Drake was very upset about this, and the irony of it all is that, in 2026 he wears nail polish. So Aristo wasn't that far off 20 years ago.
I gotta ask you, man, what is the deal with the reference to the thong?
I don't know. I really don't get it. I mean, like I said, I made a comment the other night. Like, I guess it was just like, it's a diss record. You want to make your words rhyme or something. Apparently, they're saying that they know a girl that says I wear thongs or something. I mean, it's dumb shit. Like, I don't even get it. I wish somebody would explain that to me. I don't know what the whole story is with that.
So you say they don't have a picture of you on the internet, like sitting in a thong, like.
Nah, man, not me, bro.
Now, Drake would also claim that him and Aristo originally were supposed to do a record together. Aristo had told him that he sounded like Kanye West, and Drake took it as a compliment. But once Aristo drops the Swagnificent record where he says Drake sounds like Budden and Kanye, Drake then says that he realized the guy was dissing him, and it was up from there.
We were going to do a record on a Boy Wonder beat, and he was like, yeah, you sound like Kanye or whatever. He made a comment like I sound like Kanye West or some shit like that. I was like, cool, it was more of a compliment at the time. And then I heard the record, like, sound like Kanye and Joe Budden, and people told me, like, that Do What You Do record was like, oh, that's a Budden flow, I heard that a couple times. So I was like, all right, maybe it's a shot at me, but I never really acted on it. I was like, whatever.
So this beef actually ended with a track by Drake called Good Riddance. There were a bunch of other Canadian rappers on this track, but Drake had the last verse, and it aged in a crazy ironic way because 20 years later, he's suing UMG for releasing Kendrick's diss track where Kendrick's talking about predators and certified PDFs. But 20 years before, on this diss record against Aristo, Drake actually calls him out for allegedly trying to get with A minors and also for putting on this gangster persona that is a complete facade. Does that sound familiar to you guys? With all the knife talk and the mob tie stuff? The same ammo that people use against Drake today is stuff that he was dissing rappers over 20 years ago.
Trying to pull 17-year-olds down in Bramley and hang around black crime just so you can have something to say in your rap lines.
This bar is even crazier, you guys. He starts talking about young girls at a private school.
They say Drake killed it like young girls at a private school.
Yo, shout out to all the 12-year-olds in the building. What's up?
Now you might be saying, alright, Rapaholics, like this is funny and all, but what the hell does this have to do with Joe Budden? Well, remember how this beef really derived from Aristo saying that Drake bit Budden's entire flow? Drake flips that bar here in a pretty clever way to take a dig at the lack of commercial success that Aristo had seen by stating that if Drake himself was copying the flows and styles that Budden used in his music, then Aristo was mirroring the trajectory that Joe Budden's career had took. Basically calling Aristo a failed artist, but also sending astray Joe's way just because he was caught in the crossfire.
If I copy Budden's flow, you mimicking his career.
And after this, again, Drake was dubbed the unanimous winner of this beef, and he was talking pretty tough in interviews, or pretty confidently to say the least, about the entire situation.
It was good riddance, it was lights out, it was a body, and that's what it was, man, and that's why, good riddance, and what happened? Good riddance, right? Bye. When it comes to trying to check Drake, it was good riddance, body, and it was over. Don't try and check me, man. So that was my point all along, like, you know, you do a little track and that's cool, man, and I will check you.
Spicy.
By the time the dust had settled on the Aristo battle, Drake had much bigger fish to fry. He was shopping around at all different type of major record labels and eventually landed with Lil Wayne over at Young Money, Cash Money, and Universal Music Group. Right before signing the dotted line, Drake dropped what is now known as his classic mixtape, So Far Gone, in February of 2009. And just about 2 months later, in April, Drake would find himself already headfirst within the industry, mingling with other artists at events, and he would meet Joe Budden for the very first time in New York at Joe's girlfriend Tahiri's birthday party. Remember that name, Tahiri, because Drake knew her too. And if you know anything about Drake, there's always a little risk involved when he knows your girlfriend.
Spicy.
At the time, Joe Budden was very early on the internet content creation game. Long before the internet was even a thing, he had actually dabbled in being a radio personality, but ultimately his record label told him, you gotta pick a lane, either be a rapper or a radio broadcaster. But he never actually put down the camera, and this night was no different. Joe Budden captured history on this street corner right outside his girlfriend's birthday party. He documented his very first time meeting Drake. See, Joe Budden recognized Drake's potential very early on, and in this clip, they're kind of celebrating the moment. Everything Drake had accomplished, as again, this was just a month after So Far Gone release, so Drake was on the cusp of superstardom. So unfortunately, as I was uploading this video, I got hit with like 8 million copyright strikes just for using the clip of Joe Budden meeting Drake for the first time. So I can't actually show it, but I could summarize it because it's crazy. Outside the party, Joe basically predicts Drake's future. He told Drake that one day a rapper would diss him hard enough that he would feel forced to respond. Drake said that would never happen and that if someone dissed him, they would never see a reply for it. But Joe was right. And the ironic part is that in this clip, Drake says that the industry tried to pit him up against Kid Cudi, since they were both melodic rappers coming up at the same time. But years later, when Pusha T pushed Drake into a beef, just like Joe predicted some rapper would, Drake ended up dissing Kid Cudi in the same song that he was dissing Pusha T, the same guy that he said he wanted no problems with. And that's why this clip feels so important. It was Joe nearing the end of his rap career, Drake about to become a superstar, and Joe essentially warning Drake of what the industry would turn him into. Just a couple months later, Drake would blow up astronomically. And while he did so, he went on a massive feature run doing songs with some of the biggest artists in the game like Jay-Z, Timbaland, Alicia Keys, Jamie Foxx, and a lot more. So when he's asked in an interview if him and Joe Budden will ever do a collab together, even though early on Drake took a lot of inspiration from Joe, he was pretty quick to say that Joe would not be getting a feature from him anytime soon because he was much more focused right now on working with bigger artists. He would also admit that in that clip, where him and Joe met for the first time at Tahiri's birthday party, Drake himself was a little nervous.
My man's humble right here. And I knew that as soon as I saw you on Joe Budden TV. Oh. When he caught you outside there. That was funny right there.
Yeah, man, you know, Budden, he's a great dude, man. We joke around a lot.
Yeah.
So I was probably like, you know, he make TVs witty.
Yeah.
So I was probably a little nervous. They used to say some crazy shit.
Can we expect a song? You should do a song with Joey, man.
Yeah, you know, I mean, right now,
I'm sure everyone wants to do a song with
Yeah, and there's a lot of, we already have a lot of, you know, bullets in the gun, so to speak.
Yeah.
Not to be violent or anything, but you know, we got bullets in the gun, so I just gotta let a couple shots off, you know, as far as features, you know, that are waiting to come out, like big things that will be great looks for me.
In the meantime, the tables would turn. As Drake got bigger, slightly off the blueprint that Joe Budden had first laid down, he would quickly overshadow Joe in popularity, which would end up making some fans have revisionist history. You could see it in the reaction to new Joe Budden music in 2010 when Drake was already a massive artist. Not much changed stylistically on what Joe was doing by 2010 versus what he was doing in like 2007 when people used to say that Drake was copying him. But now fans were getting it confused, thinking that it was actually Joe biting Drake because Drake had just ran off with the style and got so big. People forgot who was doing it first. You could see some Joe Budden fans clapping back at all the other commentators who were saying that Joe was trying to run off with Drake's style. These guys were saying Joe Budden is a real MC. Drake is an actor impersonating a Lil Wayne flow. Or this other guy saying, I'm laughing at the idea you guys are trying to paint that Joe Budden is acting like Drake. F out of here, Joe Budden's been had that flow way back since mood music started. How about Drake stop trying to act like Weezy or Big Sean? Ever thought of that? And it's definitely true that by this point in time, 2010, like Drake was rapping a lot more like Lil Wayne or Kanye than he was like Joe Budden.
I studied
Joe Budden
for a living.
And the narrative that Joe Budden was biting Drake would only get worse. Joe actually got Drake's mentor, Lil Wayne, on his 2012 single, She Don't Put It Down, which was a relatively mild hit. But the beat was a complete knockoff of Drake's song I'm On One with the same producer, T-. And for someone who was so respected as an MC as Joe was, to go this more radio mainstream route this late in his career, well, fans of mood music didn't take it lightly, and people were writing eulogy articles on Joe's career. I'm just trying to paint the picture for you guys that as the new decade would emerge and Drake would emerge to the top of the game, Joe Budden was kind of trying to tread water. And the narratives around his music were a lot different than they were in the 2000s. This is an excerpt from that eulogy article. They say, it can get much worse. What's a more awful proposition? That Drake wrote Joe Budden's verse on this song? Or that Joe Budden wrote such a blatantly awful knockoff of a Drake song? I'm leaning more towards the idea that Joe wrote it. Drake has been killing guest spots all year, and this uninspired half-baked club dreck that Joe Budden just put out is way beneath Drake.
Spicy.
So you can see here, by 2012, Drake can do no wrong, and Joe Budden, according to these guys, were making half-baked club drecks that were way beneath anything Drake would release. So it's safe to say by this point in 2013, as phenomenal as an MC as Joe was, the days of him becoming a superstar were behind him, and he was starting to understand that. He took a role on the TV reality show Love and Hip Hop, joining as a main cast member in January of 2013 with his girlfriend at the time, the same one who had that birthday party that Joe first met Drake at, Tahiri. See, Joe had been dating Tahiri on and off since around 2005, but I want to emphasize they were on and off because in 2011, Tahiri actually claimed in a Vlad TV interview that her and Drake were quote unquote getting to know each other and eventually things didn't work out, but they were still cool. If you guys followed this story, you probably know the famous picture of Drake and Tahiri around this time period swimming with dolphins. Well, regardless of that, Joe Budden and Drake are still pretty cool as well, it seems like, on the surface. They both frequent the strip clubs. There's pictures of them smoking hookah together. They end up building mutual connections with a lot of the same women. Tahiri was just one of many, but if you know Drake, again, like I mentioned earlier, you know he has a strategy of using the women around the men that are his opposition against those men. And you'll see that pop up again later in this story. For now, Joe and Tahiri showcase their turbulent relationship on Love and Hip Hop, and that turbulence capitulates when Joe Budden ends up proposing to Tahiri in their second season on the show. Tahiri ends up saying no.
This is wrong.
I need you. I don't want to spend another day without you.
Come on, Joe, don't do it. Don't. Please, 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 please.
Will you marry me?
Love is trust, and I don't trust you right now.
That's a no.
Now, if you rewind about a year before this proposal, even though Drake and Tahiri may have had a little fling for a little bit and then she went back to Joe, it didn't seem to cause a public rift between Joe and Drake. Aside from those pictures of Joe and Drake smoking hookah together on a couch in 2013 after Drake had his little fling with Tahiri, you also get Joe pen up a response to Kendrick Lamar for his Control verse, where Joe is rapping on the Control beat and actually bigs up Drake in order to slight Kendrick Lamar. There's so much irony in this entire story, right? I mean, in 2026, you have people talking about Joe is on the TDE payroll, trying to spread propaganda about Kendrick to tear Drake down. But back in 2013, he's rapping on the Control beat, somewhat kind of taking shots at Kendrick, claiming he's not king in New York, but even worse, saying that Drake washed Kendrick on the 2 collaborations that they had together, Poetic Justice and Effin' Problems. He rapped, "Keep it funky, Drake washed you twice." By 2015, Joe and Tahiri obviously had their ugly public breakup, abuse allegations. It ended in a very dark way, but 2015, Joe is saying that he had actually given Drake his blessing to date Tahiri. He didn't care about it. He emphasized that him and Drake were friends and they've had confidential conversations about women, so them dating the same woman was no big deal to Joe.
Did you ever text Tahiri like a word?
No, I hit Drake.
Really?
I said, yo, don't think that I'm one of the sucker ass that's gonna be mad about that. Like, I want you to know it's okay.
You gave it your blessing.
And he said, I would be mad if you didn't feel that way. It was one of those.
What about when you
No, not giving my blessing. I don't need to give my blessing to 2 grown adults.
You felt like it was your place to do that?
I needed to let him know that.
Got you.
Because him and I had a relationship, or some semblance of a relationship.
Yeah.
So I just needed to let him know.
It's not awkward.
I'm cool. Yeah, that's not awkward for me.
Do you do that for rap purposes? Like, just in case y'all battle later? Like, you can't never use this against me because I told you it was okay?
No. But him and I have had confidential conversations about women. That's why I did it. We've kicked it that way.
I mean, if there's a person to talk to about bartenders in the tri-state, it's Joe Budden.
It's definitely Joe.
So
Well, why are you saying bar? I'm saying women.
Now, before Drake and Joe would kind of go head-to-head in their own battle, Drake, of course, had a different opponent first. Remember back in 2009, Joe told Drake, at some point, someone will fire a shot at you and you will feel forced to respond. Well, that first came with Meek Mill. Meek Mill, of course, accused Drake of using ghostwriters, and Drake would respond with not 1 but 2 separate diss records, unanimously winning that battle. Joe Budden would support Drake amidst his back-to-back victory. He would tweet out at Meek Mill saying, "Meek makes really good music, but this clearly is not his lane. Get back to you, my guy. You got the girl and you just had the #1 album, but you're walking into a trap wearing a blindfold. No hate, I promise." Joe would even send his praises to Drake for the great strategy Drake implemented in that battle, saying, Drake planned artwork, sent bottles to a man that he hates, aka Charlemagne, and coordinated with the Blue Jays Philly series. He's clearly thinking. And the funny thing is, Joe would dedicate the majority of the 24th ever episode of his podcast. It literally didn't even have a name yet. It was called I'll Name This Podcast Later. Most of it was spent actually breaking down this beef. This was before Drake dropped Back to Back. He had only dropped Charged Up, but Meek Mill already seemed like he was about to lose. Now, keep in mind, Joe Budden and Meek, I don't believe they were seen eye to eye with each other either at the time. So they're joking around on the podcast saying that maybe Meek will have some bars for Joe as well. Joe says if that's the case, he would turn off the podcast mic and immediately get in the booth to demolish Meek. And Rory, who was still on the podcast at the time, had said that, if Joe doesn't end up using his bars in a diss track against Meek, he could just give them to Drake. And Joe would emphasize, again, this is right when Drake got called out for using ghostwriters. Joe would defend Drake, saying that Drake is a great enough writer on his own. He doesn't need anybody's help, including Joe's.
In the event that my name would have been said, I would be in the studio right now instead of recording this podcast, and I would have a reply out this morning.
Well, if you don't rap them, sell them to Drake.
On the next episode of the podcast, Joe would continue foreshadowing things, saying that he was bored of the Drake and Meek beef because Meek just wasn't a worthy opponent, but instead, he wanted to see Drake go at Pusha T. Remember, by this point, we're in 2015. Pusha T had released a diss record against Drake, Lil Wayne, and Birdman in 2012 called Exodus. Really, he had been going after Wayne, going after Drake for years by this point. Rory suggests that maybe Pusha T looked at the Drake and Meek battle and realized, Drake is a more worthy opponent than I thought, based off how he handled the Meek beef. But Joe shuts that down, emphasizes that, yeah, Drake won, but it's like he beat the Knicks. Like, he didn't beat that strong of a team. Pusha T would be more than well prepared for a battle against Drake, and in fact, the whole Drake and Meek Mill beef had actually made Joe revisit Pusha T's diss Exodus 23:1, and he realized that that was one of the hardest diss records that he could remember, even though this was just off the cusp of Drake dropping back-to-back. So you can already see Joe is showing Drake some love, but still kind of counterbalancing it out by emphasizing there are some opponents who have the potential to absolutely crush Drake.
I don't even want to talk about Meek and Drake anymore. If we were to see a beef, since hip-hop has been so great these past 2 weeks, I just want to see Pusha and Drake one time.
Oh, that would be amazing.
I'm not saying Push would be rethinking now, but I'm sure Push does not have the same mentality that he did before.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
I think Push would live for something like this.
Why does he not?
Because he just showed how strategic he takes and serious he takes these rap beefs.
Against a guy who can't rap.
Pusha is a beast.
Well, first of all, I'm not suggesting Pusha can't rap, and I think that would be an amazing battle. I'm just saying Push may be a little bit like, oh, all right, he can do this.
Okay.
Before, I didn't think he could do that at all.
I don't think that Pusha is looking at that potential beef any differently than he did. Drake did very well against the fucking Knicks. You beat the Knicks, my nigga. But all of this Drake and Meek shit just really made me go listen to Exodus like a million times.
After back-to-back, Drake would only get bigger. And while he always dipped his toes into multiple genres, it seemed like, at this point, his mind was more set than ever on achieving that pop star status that a Rihanna or a Taylor Swift had. And while that was kind of hard to see because Drake had just came off a rap battle, a rap mixtape with If You're Reading This It's Too Late, and a trap music collab tape with Future on What a Time to Be Alive, it was Joe Budden who very early on predicted that Drake would take a little detour, sacrificing lyrics and substance for bubblegum pop hits. Most of you guys probably know that Joe and Drake's beef reached a boiling point when Joe was very critical about Drake's album Views. And once Joe gives his criticisms of the project, nothing was ever the same, no pun intended.
I think that kid on that album that I heard sounds real uninspired. I think that music is real good. You can fool the people that are not paying attention. That music sounds good and I enjoy it. 40, you sound amazing. 40 continues to progress. Drake, you do not.
So you see how exactly what Joe's saying here would go on to pan out in terms of Drake's entire career, right? 40 would continue to progress on the production side. Drake would continue to regress in terms of lyricism, subject matter, and innovation as a whole. And Joe would emphasize that he missed the days where Drake would start the trends instead of being the one to hop on them.
I miss the Drake that starts the waves, not hops on other waves. And I'll say it again. I miss Drake that pushes the agenda, not let the agenda push him. Big difference between a Drake and a Hov while they both at the top.
Tell me what you have learned about Drake from Take Care to now.
For a nigga that is crowned king of introspection, he's been at the top of this music game for years. What has he told you different from Take Care to this album?
So this was a really long-winded rant before the days of Joe being, I guess you could say, a more refined podcaster. His thoughts were kind of all over the place, but again, he predicts a lot of what we would see with Drake's career for the next 10 years after this podcast released. He's asking you important questions. What have you learned from Drake from Take Care up until the Views album? Absolutely nothing. For someone who was crowned the king of introspection, for someone who was wearing that crown that Joe Budden believed the last person before him wore was Jay-Z, he had very big shoes to fill, a very important voice to bring forward, and he used it to churn out a bunch of unenthusiastic, generic pop records for the sake of appeasing the industry. Even way back then, Joe looked at Kendrick, Cole, and Drake as the three artists that dictated where hip-hop would go going forward. And Joe believed that each one of them stood for something unique in their music and message. But Drake at this point was kind of just becoming a product of the most recent trend that he latched onto, not creating his own, not elevating the genre. So Joe emphasizes again that the Views album was good. It's just not enough for the standard that he held Drake up to, which I personally think is valid criticism.
Drake, Cole, Kendrick, those three move the needle. Those three transcend music. Those are the three people that my grandparents, my parents, and my child would ask me about. So I have to watch those three obsessively, and they all stand for a cause, a very important cause. We need these three. Kendrick's cause, we can see it. We don't have to question it, and we don't have to question what his agenda is. This is a case of be careful what you wish for, because I was the first person to say that I didn't really enjoy Kendrick's last album, but it was a masterpiece.
And he took a risk with that.
It was a masterpiece. I said that when it came out. So here we get Drake's album, which I enjoy. I don't want that to get lost in what I'm saying. I really like Drake's album. But nope, not enough. I have too much invested in him. Drake, Cole, Kendrick, some of us elder statesmen in rap rely on y'all. The fight that we started last decade, the baton is in your hand. Introspection. Observation or examination of one's own mental and emotional state. Mental processes, the act of looking within oneself. Now, since Take Care to now, can anybody tell me that Drake has done that? No, but we can tell you where Courtney works.
Hooters on Peachtree.
I give Drake more credit than that, is what I am saying. And if there's one place I'm qualified to speak, it's on introspection.
So this epic rant took place in very early May. A couple days after this, French Montana would post a video on Snapchat where he's previewing a brand new song with Drake. At the end of that preview, Drake raps, "Pump, pump, pump it up." And this is completely a full circle moment. Because remember at the beginning of this video, I showed you guys diss songs where Drake was calling Joe Budden a one-hit wonder. That one hit was called Pump It Up. Later on, Joe and Drake would meet, and Joe would warn Drake that eventually a rapper will say something scathing enough where Drake will be forced to respond. Now here we are all these years later, and it was actually Joe that, no pun intended, pumped Drake up to respond, and he's doing so by calling Joe a one-hit wonder once again.
Pump it up.
Now, of course, this whole thing stemmed from the fact that Joe was just a big Drake fan and felt like Drake had lacked some inspiration lately. And if that was the case, Joe may have been the reason for Drake's inspiration being reignited. Because he would release his timestamp record 4 p.m. in Calabasas, very bar heavy, and a couple of those bars may have been directed at Joe. It's very subliminal, but remember in those podcast clips I played you guys earlier, Joe Budden kept calling Drake the golden boy, right? The golden child. He was the next Jay-Z. Drake flips that to say, they hold me in this high regard and think they can determine the trajectory of my career, the artistic direction that I end up taking. Nobody can control me, and the issues I have with these people who are criticizing me, it's quote-unquote too wild to reconcile. Now, a lot of these bars are also mainly aimed at Diddy because he just punched Drake or something in a nightclub. That's a story for another video, but pay attention to these last bars here. We know that early on in Drake's career, Joe Budden was trying to get a feature with him, but Drake turned him down. Drake raps here, they're hitting my line like, when can I get a favor? Or where's my B at? Like I'm about to tell you where she's been at. Costa Carreras, I got her kidnapped. She ain't sorry and I ain't sorry. It's too late for sorry. We know that Drake and Joe Budden's ex Tahiri took a trip to a tropical island to swim around with dolphins. We know that Joe claims him and Drake slept with a lot of the same women. Here Drake is saying some guy is calling him for favors and asking him where his girl is at. Likely a shot at Joe, but still too subliminal to know. And because of that, this is where we start the show. Just like Kendrick Lamar, Joe would end up dropping 4 diss records on Drake's head top. On the first one, Making a Murderer, he even raps that he should have done this, quote unquote, 2 Kendricks ago. Now this can mean one of 2 things. We know that at this point in time, it's 2016, Kendrick had released 2 major label studio albums, right? To Pimp a Butterfly in 2015, Good Kid Mad City in 2012. A year before Kendrick Lamar released Good Kid Mad City, Drake was swimming with dolphins with Tahiri, Joe Budden's ex-girlfriend. Maybe the 2 Kendricks Joe is referring to are the 2 Kendrick Lamar albums, meaning that Joe should have been dissing Drake way back in 2011 before Kendrick even dropped Good Kid Mad City. But I think it's actually deeper than that. I think Joe had been paying attention to the subliminal war that Drake and Kendrick were going through and makes reference to it to say that Drake was obviously ducking Kendrick and hiding behind subliminals, right? Never direct with it. Kendrick, on the other end, was quite direct when it came to the 2 times up to that point that he had taken shots at Drake. The first time was on the Control verse where he obviously mentions Drake by name, and the second time was a couple months later after Drake had a very sensitive reaction to that verse when Kendrick rapped Nothing's Been the Same Since They Dropped Control and tucked a sensitive rapper back in his pajama clothes. Very obviously targeting Drake there.
Spicy.
Joe is not only saying that he should have taken shots at Drake a long time ago, he's specifically referencing the 2 times that Kendrick Lamar shot at Drake, most likely to highlight the fact that in both the Kendrick and now the Joe situation, Drake kept hiding behind subliminals, kind of ducking the smoke. Now, I did a video fully breaking down all of the Joe Budden diss tracks aimed at Drake, so I'll leave a link to that video in the description of this one, but after those 4 diss tracks dropped, Drake pretty much ignored Joe. Instead, it was Drake's fans that fought the battle for him. I don't know if you guys remember, but this was absolutely hilarious. 2 little kids pulled up to Joe's house to taunt him, and Joe came out, wife beater, sweating like a maniac, about to throw rocks at these kids, made for a hilarious encounter.
It's Joe Budden. It's Joe Budden. Joe Budden.
This man's dead ass chasing us, boy. Yo, we're getting chased by Joe Budden, my nigga. Oh my. Boy! Follow me on Twitter, boy. Read a Kid Prodigy. Yo. Back up. That wasn't me. Lock the door. Go. Yo, back up. Yo, don't. I'm trying to make.
Sir, yo. Me. Sir, that wasn't me.
Yo, back up.
That wasn't me. I'm sorry.
Back up.
Block again. I'm gonna kill one of you little niggas.
All right, I'm sorry. Sir, I'm sorry.
Yo, chill.
Sir, I'm sorry for them. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry. You got. That wasn't me. I wasn't. Okay, I'm sorry.
I keep seeing you tweet. Come on this block again, and I'm gonna hurt one of you niggas.
Okay, I'm sorry.
This is not the internet.
I'm sorry.
I will kill one of you.
I understand. I'm sorry. I apologize for everything.
Do you hear the words I'm saying?
Yes, I understand.
I got you.
I'm sorry.
Follow me on Twitter, though, alright?
Stop, bro.
I recorded him saying that he's
Bro,
gonna kill
is
him.
my window broken? Bro, Siobhan? Is my window broken? Siobhan?
Yo.
And Drake, of course, being petty, did not respond with a diss track, but instead with his Twitter fingers. Yes, he really followed one of the kids on Instagram who pulled up to Joe's house. He also sent a little jab at Joe at one of his concerts that summer, making a joke that, with all the jabs and disses that Joe had sent his way, maybe all that hard work will pay off and Drake will let Joe come on stage with him and perform his one hit, Pump It Up.
I should have brought Joe Budden up here and let him do Pump It Up one time tonight.
Drake would continue with the jokes, no disses though, as Joe would claim that after all these tracks, Drake actually DM'd Joe, offering a bit of a friendly gesture. Drake invited Joe to one of his sold-out shows at the Madison Square Garden and even said he'd pay him $10,000 if he can release 25 new diss records from the time of that DM until the show on August 4th. Keep in mind, it was like July 22nd when Joe released his last diss track, so Drake was basically saying, can you make 25 more diss tracks in the span of a week? If you can, I'll pay you $10K. Of course, Joe wouldn't take this offer, but what's pretty diabolical is the fact that just a couple weeks after Drake allegedly sent these DMs, at one of his other shows in Detroit, he ends up bringing out Eminem. If you guys didn't know, Joe Budden had been signed to Eminem for many years right before he got independent and started releasing all these diss tracks against Drake. So that was definitely a chess move. But now Joe was independent with both his music and podcasts, and he would drop his last album ever in November of 2016, just a couple months after this extremely one-sided rap battle took place. And after that, it was lights out for Joe Budden the rapper. He was officially retired and focused full-time on podcasting and taking a role as the co-host of the legendary hip-hop show Everyday Struggle with DJ Akademiks and Nadeska Alexis. Now, the irony is that this is where the beef becomes completely one-sided.
I study
one-sided
rap battles for a living.
Joe had said repeatedly when he first started the podcast and he was still rapping, actively dissing Drake, he thought it was funny that whenever he got on the podcast mic is when rappers decided to actually rap at him. But once he got in the booth, they wanted no smoke. Well, Now Joe was officially retired, so it was open season to fire on him, and Drake took absolute advantage of that. But before we get to that, I mean, again, Joe Budden does about a year on the Everyday Struggle show, and just notice how differently Akademiks was talking about Drake in Joe's presence here, saying that Drake is scared of Kendrick, Drake has no unilateral classics. It's just funny to see 10 years prior to where we're at now.
Right now.
Is Drake scared of Kendrick? Let me get my direct questions out the way.
Yes.
Is Big Sean scared?
I'm making? I think will be considered classic. I'm not considering that Drake has any unilateral classics that would be seen by the culture.
But now, speaking of Kendrick and Drake, Drake would take several shots at Kendrick Lamar on the song Diplomatic Immunity, but that's a story for another video, because he would also be taking shots at Joe Budden and DJ Akademiks on that track. That was right around the time when Joe Budden had dropped out of Everyday Struggle, quit basically. And Drake reflects on how Joe went from, a rapper he admired to this guy just doing cultural commentary, essentially. He references the fact that Joe was critical over views, talking about Drake slowing down. He says, people looking at me like I'm slowing down. It's opinions over statistics, of course. They're gassed off their journalistic. Come at me and you'll get this ballistic report. But where was that ballistic report 2 years prior when Joe Budden had fired 4 shots at you, right? Well, he continues, right? Remember how Everyday Struggle was on the network Complex. So he raps, stuff is complex like short guys, round tall ladies. This could also be a short jab at Kendrick Lamar. And then, of course, he makes the most obvious reference to Joe Budden by basically saying his last name, rapping, I've seen Budden careers turn to sit around and talk about other careers, judging their peers. Knowledge from guys who did not contribute to none of this here. Of course, Joe went from being a rapper himself to talking about different rappers every day on Everyday Struggle. But Joe was a podcaster at this point, so he was pretty dismissive of this. He actually even said on a prior podcast when More Life had just came out and he thought that Drake was taking subliminals at him, he kind of felt bad at that point. He's like, was I too hard on Drake? Do I owe him an apology? Because remember, Joe and Drake were like kind of friends back in 2012. But the same way Drake had like a subliminal calculated chess move by inviting Joe out to his concert if Joe could drop 25 diss tracks in the span of a week against Drake, and then turn around to invite the boss of Joe Budden's old record label, Eminem, out on stage with him, Joe would have a similar pretty calculated move, because Drake would engage finally in that beef with Pusha T that Joe had been begging for years at this point. This is 2018, and I study Pusha T for a living. The first interview that Pusha T does to reflect on that beef would actually be on the Joe Budden podcast. Now, he copyrighted that thing, so I cannot play you any clips from it, but Maul, who we now know as Ovi Ho Maul, who is no longer on the Joe Budden podcast, he was on it back then, and he made an interesting statement saying that he believes in rap battles there should be no limits to what you can say, which is ironic because now he's talking about UMG should be deleting Not Like Us off of streaming platforms because it was too offensive to Drake. Isn't it funny how Maul and Akademiks switched up their tone when they were around Joe almost a decade ago when it came to Drake? But anyways, because Drake no longer viewed Joe as a threat, Joe was podcasting at this point, they actually briefly kind of almost became friends. In 2019, Joe would go live on Instagram while he hosted a pool party at his house, playing a bunch of different music, and Drake would pop up in the comments of the Instagram live saying that Joe should play Story of Adin, Pusha T's diss track against Drake, to see if it would ring off at the pool party, saying that Rob Markman, the journalist, would be the only one who knew the words to it. He also asked Joe to play his diss tracks aimed at Drake at the pool party to see if those would ring off as well. I can't lie, that's some pretty hilarious trolling. But speaking of Instagram Live, it would actually be a year later during the COVID-19 pandemic where Joe and Drake would finally get on an Instagram Live together to chop it up, and Joe was even asking Drake to do an interview with him. And Drake promised that it would eventually happen.
There we go. There's Mr. Tootsie Slide himself. Hold up. Come on, you got to talk to more people than just Elliot.
Nah, yo, I can't do this with you right now.
Why?
Because I can't.
Because you're at the embassy?
Nah, I just I know where this is gonna go. It's gonna go left.
No, it's not. Yo, why do you think that about me, man? We can have like a smooth talk. You do it with Tory Lanez and all your other fucking buddies.
It's gonna be bad for the brand right now. Oh.
But all the other OVO dudes kick it with me.
I know. Everybody fucks with you.
You're the only one that avoids me for some strange reason.
Never avoid you. I just don't see you. We're never in the same place.
Because I'm too broke.
I didn't want to say.
Spicy.
You invited Elliot and Bada over there to the embassy. They got They got to see the Tootsie Slide exclusive. They got to hear Tupac in your bathroom.
Can I have another drink, please?
Look at this. You got a bartender there. Holy shit. Can I have a beverage? I'm parched. Get the fuck out of here.
Yo, go back to your live, man. I'm gonna talk. We have an interview to do for like when the album's ready. I don't want to do this right now.
You've been saying that for a year, and then now I have a whole leaked album with like 30 Drake joints.
That's old shit. That's not the new shit. Don't worry.
All right, fine. Enjoy yourself over there.
I'm gonna be in your comments though. Don't worry.
Yo, but let me ask you, why are you trolling me this way? Honestly, like, you don't think it's hurtful to me?
Why? What do you mean? It's with an encouraging undertone.
Yeah, I'm hanging up, nigga. Bye. Oh, see, nah. All 90,000 of you niggas kick fucking rocks, man. It's just Joe, nigga. Move. Get out.
Now what's even crazier is after this in 2021, Kendrick Lamar would hop on Baby Keem's track Family Ties, where he would rap about smoking on your top 5. And just like how Joe years before predicted that eventually Pusha T and Drake would go neck and neck, he was now predicting that Kendrick Lamar and Drake were inevitably bound to battle. Now shout out to the YouTube channel Geek About It. They got a really dope page, and they were the ones who actually caught the fact that Joe Budden not only predicted that Kendrick and Drake would actually beef, but literally verbatim says these guys are not like us as he's talking about Kendrick Lamar dissing Drake. This was 4 years before Not Like Us.
Kendrick, you can fool them, can't fool me, dog.
Yo, what are y'all talking about? These ain't like us.
The Grammy goes to Not Like Us, Kendrick Lamar.
Like Nostradamus, Joe Budden has predicted oddly specific things that would happen in hip-hop years before they occurred.
I think if you hit Drake too hard, he gonna cry.
Drake, he's going ahead and filed a lawsuit for Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us.
Joe Budden's biggest I told you so moments came with the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef. 3 years before the Like That verse, he had already called it.
I'm telling you something. I've been saying it for years. They have to address each other.
You think it's gonna really happen?
Why would they do it though?
Because you have to. The two niggas tell me a time in where it hasn't happened, where the two dudes at the top don't talk to each other. They have to.
Not only did he predict that these two giants would eventually go head to head, he even described how it would happen and how Drake would be defeated.
Man, if Kendrick and Drake make us wait till 2030 to get whatever the they about to do. Like y'all avoid each other because y'all operate in different spaces, but y'all keep bumping into each other artistically because y'all are that great. You cannot do it.
But at that point, it sounded like a stretch.
Kendrick, you can fool them, can't fool me, dog. Been in this game for years. You can't trick me. You such a student, dog.
He was convinced Kendrick still had that fire, that primal competitive instinct every real MC has.
It's a stone cold killer on the loose that been quiet for years. Kendrick could play all this coy shit he want. He is an animal, threat to society.
To everyone else, that ship had sailed, but Joe Budden didn't buy it.
I still don't see this head-to-head Armageddon shit that you keep trying to predict, you keep trying to will to happen.
This is happening. Armageddon is here.
And what do you know? First-person shooter drops.
Y'all are never getting what you were talking about, that face-off. It's never happening.
And Joe says only one person gotta get mad for this to happen.
And that person was Kendrick. What's funny is he had also warned them to never take their eyes off of him.
I don't know when he's coming, but I know he's inserting himself. He's inserting himself in this. And Drake, you better look at him. He's not coming to play with you. Hey Cole, he heard your album.
Joe Budden would even predict the fate of the Kendrick and Drake battle long before it ever happened, warning Drake that if he pokes the bear too hard, some uncomfortable aspects of his past are gonna come out, and we know what that was all about with Not Like Us, right?
Kanye and others started inserting themselves into the drama. Rick Ross dropped a diss track, and Kanye made a Like That remix, promising Kendrick he'd help him take out Drake and J. Cole.
I did do this Like That remix though. I think that's what you was wanting to lead into. Shit. Let me see.
You know we had to get the hooligans up here. We're gonna take the... Yo, Dot, I got you.
And believe it or not, Joe predicted that too.
I need for Kanye to move out of the way. It's Kendrick Drake. Kanye move. Justin LeBoy move. You guys have to stop.
Before Kendrick even responded to anything Drake said, Joe had already called his next move. He'd go after that one thing Drake couldn't defend, the uncomfortable rumors that have followed him for years.
No, I'm tired of telling me to shut the up.
No,
Every time I'm telling you where some killer conscious brain is gonna go if you keep playing with that
right
Bobby
person.
Joe, whatever that little girl name, that is weird.
I love him. You know, we just text each other the other day and he was like, I miss you so much. I was like, I miss you more.
I think if you hit Drake too hard, he gonna cry.
Drake is bringing legal action against Universal Music Group as a result of Lamar's track Not Like Us, alleging they artificially inflated the popularity of Lamar's track. That is so culturally clueless.
Cole, I don't think is just prepared for these lights to be this bright.
They're not
these
battle
lights
tested.
are too
I'm not checking.
bright.
Past 2 days felt terrible. Like, it let me know how good I've been sleeping for the past 10 years.
And in a moment that feels almost supernatural, while talking about how Kendrick couldn't fool him, Joe casually said the name of what would become the biggest song in the entire beef, a full 3 years before it ever existed, almost like a prophecy.
Kendrick, you can't trick me. You such a student, dog.
Now what are y'all talking about? These niggas ain't like us.
How? Hold on, bro. How?
But that was 2021 when Joe predicted all this. Let's rewind back to this era because things were still kind of amicable between Drake and Joe. I mean, you could perceive this as a shot, but Drake was out in Turks. They were playing Joe Budden's Pump It Up song, and Drake was getting very excited that, you know, his song was ringing off in the club that he was at.
Where else, Joey, would you have him going so crazy? Hey. Going so nuts to that Pump It Up.
But a year later, Joe would not express that same type of enthusiasm when he heard Drake's music, because Drake would drop For All the Dogs, where he had bars like, she was 21, she was still a savage. Overall, it was a very uninspired, underwhelming project, and just like how Joe's critiques of Views would spawn their year-long beef, his critique of this new For All the Dogs album would kick that beef up into a whole other dimension.
I Mr. Drake that when he dropped, the rappers hit him. Not these little fucking kids. I don't give a fuck about you and Kai Cenat. That's gonna sound like, hey, go find some niggas your fucking age. Hang out with them. Get some of that sauce. His top 10,
He don't
20,
even have
30,
the best
40,
verse on his project.
top 50 verses are not on this project. And that's where I recognize I have to let go of Drake. I have to let go. The Drake that I love was the best hook creator, maker, loner outer of in the world. What is the last memorable hook you've heard from Drake? I haven't heard a dominant hook from Drake in a long time. So now you couple that with he don't rap the way that he stay scheming, take care. This is like Yachty rapping. This is like he rapping for the children. Yo, dog, I had to look up how old this nigga was when I finished listening to the album. You are 36. Your birthday is in 20 days. I Googled that too. You will be 37 years old. Get the f away from some of these younger niggas and stop f***ing these 25-year-olds. I want to hear adult Drake rapping for adult people. He rapping for the kids, the streams, the
Instagram
accolades,
comments, the algorithm.
So as you can see here, Joe was very critical of the fact that Drake was chasing more younger sounds, hanging out with all the young streamers, not making music for people his age, approaching 40, but talking about sleeping with 25-year-olds. Well, yeah, as you can imagine, that triggered Drake. He didn't like that too much. So he writes this massive paragraph in the comments of an Instagram post, which was just the video that I showed you guys of Joe critiquing the album. And Drake is basically saying, like, this guy did not accomplish what he wanted to, right? He wanted to be a successful rapper. He failed at that. So you should not take the opinions of a failed rapper when they're critiquing your art. You guys can pause the video to read the entire thing if you're really that interested. It's a nasty message, to say the least. DJ Akademiks would later go on to say that
those 3 Big Macs are for me.
DJ Akademiks would later go on to say that he spoke to Drake, and Drake wasn't actually upset that Joe critiqued his music, but instead that he was implying Drake was hanging around, you know, people who were too young to be around. Which is a straight lie, because, I mean, in the message alone, you can read Drake is talking about how Joe is not worthy of critiquing his music. So obviously that was a sore spot for him as well. But the whole Joe talking about Drake liking young people thing obviously grew legs of its own, because throughout his battle with Kendrick Lamar, just a couple months after this whole back and forth with Joe, Drake would use Tupac AI vocals on a diss track called Tailor Made, where he would taunt Kendrick into responding to him. This was before Kendrick even dropped Euphoria. And on that track, Drake said, "Call him the B word for me. Talk about him liking young girls. That's a gift for me. I heard it on the Budden podcast, so it's gotta be true."
Yo, shout out to all the 12-year-olds in the building. What's up?
Referencing the fact that Joe on his podcast was talking about Drake should stop sleeping with 25-year-olds. But Drake completely misinterpreted that to say like, hey, Joe Budden was talking about me liking young girls. Like, you should use that in a diss against me. So the whole Not Like Us blueprint was not only predicted by Joe in 2021, where he literally said these guys are not like us when he was talking about it being inevitable that Drake and Kendrick would eventually go head to head, but it was Drake on Taylor Made being inspired by Joe's comments on his podcast that would basically request that Kendrick talk about him liking young girls. Isn't that crazy how all these things work out? Oh, it was also funny that after Joe's critiques about For All the Dogs, even though Drake would tell Akademiks that, he didn't care that Joe was critiquing the album. Joe could say whatever he wants about his music. He just doesn't like that, Joe was talking about Drake liking young girls. Drake would actually a week later release 5 new songs that he claimed he recorded after For All the Dogs already released. They were all straight bars, so he was responding to the critics who were talking about, he didn't have enough bars in the album. And on that album, there were multiple shots aimed at Joe, specifically on the song The Shoe Fits, where he talks about this girl who is dating, presumably, James Harden, saying, "You lost your girl to the sniper." And we know that both Drake and Joe's love interest at one point, Tahiri Jones, had been romantically involved as well with James Harden. Anyways, after the whole Kendrick and Drake beef, Drake would create a new Instagram account called Plot Twist where he'd post a bunch of random pictures. On that Instagram account, he posted a picture of Joe Budden, not looking so flattering, looking like he's, been eating a little too much, his gut is a little too big. And Joe would respond by going on his podcast saying, you got 100 different rappers firing at you, don't fire at me. I wanted to, have this little tango with you 10 years ago when you were lit and it was fun. You're a corpse now. You're dead. I'm not going back and forth with a corpse.
Drake, don't shoot at me now that you ice cold. I'm not doing it back and forth with a corpse. I wanted to do it when you was lit. It was fun. Don't go get shot all through the year and then pop up like Bernie at Weeknd at Bernie's wanting to shoot at me now. No, nigga. Go spin. Spin the fucking block.
Drake would respond to this in the best way he knows how to, pitting the women in his opposition's life against them. What he would do is release a collab album with PARTYNEXTDOOR in 2025. He'd have a song on there called Gimme a Hug, and on that song he said, "Melissa Ford, you're a legend from the 6, hate to see you with a D-sucker." Melissa Ford is someone who is from Drake's hometown of Toronto, but she was also a co-host on the Joe Budden podcast. Drake is basically saying here, you're great, but it sucks that you're next to a D-sucker. Putting her in an awkward position because, yeah, she might be happy she was, praised in this Drake song, but she's sitting next to his op on this podcast all the time. So can she be happy about the song? Can she celebrate it? Or will that muddy the waters in her professional relationship with Joe Budden? And it definitely did seem to ruffle some feathers on the podcast. They at one point called Melissa Ford out for embracing the song, putting it all over her Instagram. Meanwhile, she's sitting next to the guy that Drake was calling a D-sucker, right? It puts her in an awkward predicament.
It was a tool initially to get under Joe's skin, but it was still a tool that you fell into. It was still a marketing tool.
I didn't fall into anything.
And then you tried to dress it up as, yo, I'm being celebrated, so allow me to be celebrated at the detriment of your boss.
How is it the detriment to him?
Because it was an insult, yo, Melissa Ford, you're around a dick sucker. It was an insult to him.
He never says his name.
If that's the angle you going with, I have to respect that and I yield.
It's the only angle.
At the same time, Drake was selling hoodies with her face on it. And when you click the link to buy the hoodie, it actually led to Joe Budden Podcast's Patreon account. So he was playing all type of war games with Joe at this point. And whether or not this actually caused a strain in Joe's relationship with Melissa Ford, who knows, but she would end up leaving the Joe Budden podcast just a couple months after this. Drake would double down with the Joe Budden disses on Iceman, with Joe being the person who possibly got the highest quantity of bars aimed at them on the entire project. And if this video made you believe that deep down, Joe and Drake's issues stem over women that they've been involved with, Drake would kind of echo that sentiments on the song Make Them Remember off of Iceman, where he rapped, I watched the scouts spaz him with a puzzled face. Who knows which one of his bubble-shaped tings I must have ushered through the double gates, showed her the time of her life while broski having stomach aches, hearing about good times at Lover's Lake, and send her back to you while you're sleepwalking in another state. Ah, you'll live to see another day. This is hilarious because Joe Budden apparently has a sleepwalking issue, and at one point he was actually sleepwalking naked and rang his neighbor's doorbell naked in his sleep. Drake here is saying, like, this guy's face is all puzzled up. Who knows which one of his quote-unquote bubble-shaped tings, aka, you know, a woman with likely a BBL, some big features, who knows which one of the dozens of those I took to quote-unquote lover's lane, like which one of those women I took to my place, showed her the time of her life, then sent her back to him who's in another state, aka not just another state in the United States, but also in another state of mind because he is sleeping but walking through his neighbor's apartment naked. Pretty great set of bars here, but it's a 10-year rebuttal to Joe talking about Drake chefing up with his leftovers, right? And Joe took the high road, actually saying that he loved the album. And if I had to guess, I don't think that their issues stem specifically from women. I think it's a multitude of things. It's a very nuanced situation. I think that Drake was always mad that of all the different rappers who have studied his career, Joe may have known his music the best and was always the most honest. The first time they ever met, Joe predicted that Drake would eventually end up responding to all these different rappers dissing him. Then he predicted that Drake's album Views might have been artistically the peak of his career. Then he dropped 4 diss tracks against Drake and gave Pusha T and Kendrick Lamar the ammo they needed on their diss records, but did so 10 years prior. He even predicted the literal fact that both Pusha and Kendrick would eventually go toe-to-toe against Drake. And now Joe seems to be predicting where Drake's career goes from here. See, I always said Drake lost the battle, but he did win his own war, because the war in his eyes is not to win over hip-hop fans. Instead, it's to continue maintaining or growing his pop audience. And Iceman and those singing albums that he dropped allowed Drake to prove to himself that he can lose horrendously in rap battles, be called the worst of the worst on diss records, and still manage to sell albums. So that's got Drake feeling a little confident and talking a little crazy to anyone who's went against him. On a recent live stream, aside from barking at a goth girl, Drake also sent out a threat to rappers who are writing their replies to him, claiming that his own pen isn't dry, aka there's more ink or more ammo in his pen to write more bars at more of his ops.
I appreciate all the love. I appreciate the last few months. It's been incredible for me, you know. I dropped 3 on their head top. These guys are dropping albums. It's like hello and goodbye. You know what I'm saying? And careful with that reply because the pen isn't dry. I'm just letting you know.
Now, Joe dissected Drake's sentiments on his recent podcast, and the conversation was interesting to say the least.
And Drake just be looking so white when he around white people. Like, I like my Drake. I'm with Kendrick. I like a little bit of appropriation from this nigga. Like, Kendrick try to make him get rid of it. No, nigga, appropriate. Because when you get around the Nelk boys and fucking whoever else that were all them steak niggas, Jake Paul, when you get around your crew, it don't be a lick of black nowhere. But anyway.
And I think Joe actually misinterpreted Kendrick's lyrics. The line in question is on Euphoria, where Kendrick raps, "There's no accent that you can sell me." Meaning, no matter who you pretend to be when you're talking to me, I know that deep down you're just an actor. And that was exemplified on Drake's 20v1 live stream that he did with the Nelk Boys. When he's around them, he talks like a white Canadian frat guy. But then suddenly they bring in a lady who has a heavy Toronto accent for Drake to get set up with. And all of a sudden, Drake starts talking like he's top 5, his little minion. When Drake is around Central C or Skepta, he suddenly has a London accent. When he did those dance hall records with Wizkid or Rihanna, he suddenly had a more Caribbean accent. And when he's around Future or 21 Savage, he's talking about knife talk. So when Joe says he wants a little cultural appropriation in Drake's accent, I personally think that him even talking like a white frat boy when he's around the Nelk Boys, that's also cultural appropriation. That's not how Drake grew up. If you want to hear his real accent, go back to like 2005 interviews when he was still working on Degrassi and living at his mother's house. But anyways, back to what Joe had to say. Joe's not amused by Drake saying that his pen is not dry.
Careful with that reply because the pen isn't dry. I'm just letting you know.
All right, and that's where we got to mute you, my boy.
Nah, keep going. The other part was the corny.
Grandma would wear. Hello.
That was pretty corny.
Don't even want to say the price tag.
Oh, yeah, I'll bring him back.
Chrome bracelets. Okay.
Oh, hold up.
That's what I'm on. By the way, let me pop it. Yes, double chrome bracelets. Okay. Cartier that your grandma would wear. Hello. Don't even want to say the price.
He got money.
Diamond cross on the jeans. Like, it's just really
I don't know how to explain it other than I'm happy.
Yo, Drake, don't talk like that about your pen no more. I think that part is over. That's all I got. Like, love what you're doing. Love the 3 albums. Hey, steak, Nelk Boys.
Wait. You say you think that part is over? The pen ain't over.
That part is over with.
His pen ain't over. The fuck it is?
Yes, it is. Stop it.
You crazy as hell.
How am I crazy?
His pen ain't
How
over.
am I crazy?
He was just rapping his ass off 2 months ago.
That's not the conversation I'm having.
Oh, okay.
I'm having the conversation of threatening rappers saying my pen is still
he can
working.
He can definitely threaten rappers. Yeah, he can.
Who can he threaten?
Whoever the fuck he want.
No, he can't. No, the fuck
Outside
he can't.
that one nigga, yes he can.
No, he cannot.
Yes, the fuck he can.
The threatening days is over. Nobody's scared.
The shit that he said.
Nobody's scared. Nobody's afraid. Nobody's worried.
You adding a piece to it. You said ain't nobody say shit about niggas being scared.
Yes, you can threaten whoever you want.
Threaten who you want.
Anybody.
Jump out
But you
and
only
make an
give a threat
example.
That's what I'm talking about. Anybody can threaten anybody.
Right, but Drake could threaten a motherfucker.
He can
Cool,
threaten
you
a lot
not
of
scared. You
motherfuckers.
jump out and he can make an example out of a lot of motherfuckers.
He can threaten a lot.
We're not gonna sit here and play like he can't still get busy.
I agree.
Ultimately, Joe is right here. The way Drake is talking right now with the whole, you better be careful with your replies because my pen isn't dry, is exactly how he was talking right before Kendrick unleashed the 4 diss records on Drake's head with Euphoria 616, Meet the Grams, and Not Like Us. After that, it was white flags, crickets, and lawsuits. Ironically, Joe Budden also dropped 4 diss records on Drake's head, and Drake remained absolutely silent. I'll give Drake credit. The second verse of Family Matters, where he starts going at The Weeknd, A$AP Rocky, Rick Ross, you could say that he had strong rebuttals to those guys, but his actions after the rap battle showed that even in the midst of competition that Drake himself was begging for, if the outcome didn't turn in his favor, he would turn back around, go back to being a pop star, and suing over a conflict he was initially talking crazy over and begging for. The only thing a real MC is going to be scared of going forward when it comes to Drake is what rules are enforced in the rap battle with him so they make sure they don't get sued. And you could say all you want that Drake is suing the label, not the rapper he engaged in the battle with, but for that lawsuit to go anywhere, the judge needs to determine that Kendrick Lamar's lyrics were defamatory towards Drake. And if the judge decides that, it sets a whole new precedent for freedom of speech in music going forward. So the whole foundation of Drake's lawsuit is entirely flawed when you're looking at it from the lens of a hip-hop artist. And since that's the case, what rapper is going to be scared of engaging in a battle with a rapper who handles losses this way? The only thing they're going to be scared of is lawsuits.
Who is he saying this to?
Whoever it applies to.
No,
Be
see, that's
careful
not true.
with the shit y'all saying.
I totally disagree.
Because I can still go.
He could say that to Lil Yachty. He could say it to Don Toliver. He could say it to any of the drill rappers. Nobody that can actually MC is afraid of Drake like maybe they once were. And that's what I'm speaking to.
And
there was a time, let me talk,
niggas.
dog, please. There was a time when he could say that and it would instill fear. That day is over is all I'm saying.
Until he remind motherfuckers, Joe.
Wait. First of all, Kendrick shit was just better. The shit that he said was still hot, nigga. Nobody said the shit Drake said was whack when he was battling. It was just the nigga was just better. That's it. The shit that he said was fire. So we not gonna act like the nigga's not nice and he can get at whoever he wants.
I'm telling you,
Kendrick was just better.
Before it was
not revisionist history. When you try to say that we wasn't saying that initially, right? That's what you saying?
I said that initially. That's exactly
we gotta do
what
it.
I'm saying.
I got you. No, I don't think up here anybody said Drake pen was whack. I didn't say that.
I didn't hear that from y'all. I wasn't.
I didn't say that. If I did, then I was wrong.
Yeah, I never heard nobody. You can't say that. Drake's pen is whack. That's not what I'm saying, for the record. He could maybe say that to Gunna, Young Thug. That's what I'm saying. Nobody that could rap hear that. Before I speak on this, I need to know who he talking to. Who you talking to? That'll tell it. But no, the field as a whole is not looking at Drake like this threatening MC. Sorry.
Just to go back to the individuals rebuttaling Joe on his point that no real MC is scared of Drake, since they want to say that Drake's pen is still nice, his output in the Kendrick battle was still nice, Kendrick just outdid him. I agree that Drake didn't necessarily perform badly per se within that battle, but you got to look at his track record. It's not just the Kendrick battle, it's also the Pusha T battle. Pusha turned the rivalry up a notch with the story of Adin, and Drake bowed out. Kendrick dropped 4 generational diss records on Drake's head, and Drake turns around and sues. Drake can still go on to make good music and hits, but why would any rapper with just as strong of a pen as Drake be scared of competition from him based off how he's handled his battles in the past?
And you know what changes that? When I remind one of you motherfuckers That's all I'm saying. Cool, don't look at me that way. I'm letting y'all know that I can still do it. And if you want to feel froggy, jump. Let's play.
See, but I'm taking it a step further. I think that even saying this is performative. I don't think that, who's he talking to?
Joe, that whole stream was performative.
I don't care about, I'm only talking about rapper time now. I'm not talking about you barking at bitches. That's your business. So, I'm talking about rapper time. Now it's time for the business.
All right, cool. So rapper time.
Who is he talking to?
He could be talking to anybody. I don't think he has a direct target in what he's saying right now. It's not a particular person I'm talking to.
Oh, then shut the fuck up then.
No, because y'all niggas still talking. If y'all out there are still talking. Obviously what he said, I see everything. Even if I'm quiet, I still see everything. Niggas have been talking about Drake like he is done.
What rapper is he talking to is all I'm saying.
I think it's a general thing. I don't necessarily think it's specific. I think it's, y'all seen one nigga beat me up in the lunchroom.
I think I'm sweet.
But just know my hands work.
Okay,
so that nigga might have beat me up, but the rest of
saying.
you niggas, I'll fuck y'all up.
I love that analogy. That is what I'm saying. It's the very next day of school is all I'm saying. That fight where niggas watched you get beat up just happened yesterday. There's been no other example made to let the rest of the school know that you not sweet money no more. And it don't matter that you got beat up by the toughest nigga in the school, because Kendrick is tough. Once the school see it, another example need to be made. That's what I'm saying. Who's he talking to? Who does he even have a beef with? What rappers have even... Niggas went back in their tubby hole when he dropped 3 albums and Song of the Summer, Janice, and this. He was on a roll. What rapper has said anything great?
I don't know.
Nobody. But now that you on a high and you kicking ass, now you trying to come outside and be tough again. No, the slap's cool, album's cool, barking at bitches cool, steak, all that shit is cool. Don't try to use that to now come and talk tough to rappers that aren't talking to you, because nobody's gonna talk to you. They just seen you die.
Hey man, just in case one of you niggas is thinking about talking to me, let me let you know.
Back to one of you niggas. Who is the nigga?
Bro, you don't think he can address the field?
Why? It's top 3. It's big 3. It was only you, Cole, Kendrick. Kendrick is done. Cole is doing something. You pieced it up with Future. Your peers. You're not talking to your peer group.
Joe,
so who the fuck is he talking to?
You said yourself, after this battle, we're gonna look at one of them niggas differently, right? Well, guess what? We're after the battle, and they looking at one of them niggas differently. So what does he do? Let you niggas know in case anybody wants to play with me. Yeah, y'all saw me lose, but I'm still nice with this though. Don't get it fucked up.
You saying, to use the lunchroom analogy, don't make a declaration. Just if somebody tests you, just got it.
Nobody's talking to him that we know of.
Well, Jay-Z was talking.
Jay-Z, as I'm saying, you can be talking about Jay.
Oh, and you're not that dumb. You're not saying that to him. You're not reminding Jay-Z that you're pinned. What are we talking about here? Some of this shit, hey, I'm happy he bounced back too.
Yeah, I don't know.
But we ain't just gonna keep letting certain stupid shit get played.
No, ultimately, I don't think it matters who the target is. Like I said before, the war Drake is fighting is not to be ultimately perceived as the best MC, or for his pen to be highly respected within hip-hop. He's more concerned with how he's perceived by the general public, so he can continue to sell millions of records to them. And the reason why Joe Budden perceives Drake's current threats as hollow is likely not even because of how Drake handled his loss to Kendrick Lamar, but instead, it probably goes all the way back to when Joe Budden himself was dissing Drake. Because don't forget, Joe Budden gave Drake 4 different songs and opportunities to engage in a battle with him. Their beef stemmed from Joe criticizing Drake for sounding uninspired and stripping down his sound to cater to a wider pop audience. Drake did not respond to Joe's disses because he knew it wasn't congruent with strengthening his reputation amongst his targeted pop audience. The same way he knows that suing won't tarnish his public perception when you're talking about the general consumer, the pop audience. And with all that being taken into account, why would any rapper, including Joe Budden himself, fear Drake as a lyrical opponent when they know that his ultimate goal is to maintain his pop star image? The only difference is Joe Budden saw it before anyone else. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next one.
If it ain't about the bread, it ain't concerning me. I'm like a journalist, I got a plutters down in Germany. They never heard of this, felt like a plane without the turbulence. You moving totalist, load up a beat and try to murder it.
I study rap for a living.